Hello, welcome back to another evening of shared stories and adventures. Tonight, we're diving into the world of Stranger Things and exploring all the theories, predictions, and wild possibilities for how this epic story might end. I'll be covering all the topics I can fit in for tonight, but there's definitely more to come. So, we'll start with where we are in the season right now, what's happened so far in both volumes, and then we'll move on to the big theories about character deaths, happy endings, and how the finale might actually play out, as well as some thoughts on the spin-off tease. Plenty to get talking about, but if you like what I do here and want a way to support the channel, consider subscribing down below. But for now, grab your Eggo waffles and flashlight, get cozy, and let's begin. So, Season 5 has been released in this really interesting way that Netflix hasn't done before with Stranger Things. Instead of dropping the whole season at once or even splitting it into two parts like they did with Season 4, they went with 3 separate releases spread across the holidays. Volume 1 came out on November 26th, which was right around Thanksgiving for those in the US, and it gave us the first 4 episodes of the season. Then Volume 2 dropped on Christmas Day, December 25th, with 3 more episodes, bringing us to 7 out of 8 total. And the finale, which they're calling the finale as its own thing, is coming out on New Year's Eve, December 31st, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. What's really interesting is that the finale is a single episode, but it's massive. We're talking over 2 hours long, which is basically feature film length. The Duffer Brothers have confirmed that this is their series finale, the absolute end of the main Stranger Things story, and they wanted to give it the proper send-off it deserves. They've even arranged for it to be shown in over 500 theatres across the US and Canada at the exact same time it drops on Netflix, which is pretty mental when you think about it. Like, how often does a streaming show get a theatrical release? I think it's such a cool way to build anticipation and let the fan theories just absolutely spiral between each drop. Because with each volume, we get new information, new twists, and loads of new questions that send everyone scrambling to Reddit and Twitter to discuss what it all means. The 3-part structure has basically turned the final season into this massive event that stretched across nearly 6 weeks. And it's kept Stranger Things in the cultural conversation in a way that a single-day binge drop probably wouldn't have. And honestly, it's been absolutely wild watching everyone's theories evolve with each volume. But let's talk about what's actually happened so far, because there's loads to cover. Let's start with Volume 1, which dropped back in November and basically turned everything we thought we knew upside down. No pun intended. The first 4 episodes of Season 5 set the stage in a way that was both familiar and completely shocking. We're in the fall of 1987 now, and Hawkins is absolutely scarred by the rifts that opened at the end of Season 4. The town's under military quarantine, which means there are soldiers everywhere. Checkpoints, curfews, the whole lot. It's basically become this dystopian nightmare version of the sleepy Indiana town we knew back in Season 1. And the military isn't just there to protect people from the upside-down creatures that are still lurking around. They're actively hunting for Eleven, which forces her back into hiding. The biggest revelation in Volume 1, and I mean the one that had everyone losing their minds, was Will's powers. Will Byers, the kid who started this whole thing by getting kidnapped in the very first episode, finally gets his moment. He's got telekinetic abilities similar to Eleven's, and we see him use them to absolutely demolish an army of Demogorgons in Episode 4. It was one of the most visually stunning sequences in the entire series, watching Will just tear through these creatures that have terrorized them for years. And the way Noah Schnapp played it, you could see both the power and the fear in Will's eyes as he realized what he was capable of. What's wild is that this wasn't completely out of nowhere if you'd been paying attention. The show's been dropping hints about Will's connection to the Upside Down since Season 2, when he was possessed by the Mind Flayer. He's always been able to sense when the Upside Down was near. He could feel Vecna's presence. And now we know why. Vecna chose him for a reason all those years ago, and it wasn't just random bad luck. But Will's powers weren't the only shocking return in Volume 1. Carly, also known as 8, came back. And honestly, I'd almost forgotten about her since she only appeared in that one season 2 episode that a lot of people skip on rewatches. But she's back, and she's been through absolute hell. We find out she's been held captive by the military in some sort of facility in the Upside Down, which raises all kinds of questions about what the government's been up to. The main plot of Volume 1 centres around Vecna's plan, which is properly terrifying. He needs 12 children to act as vessels for his power, and by the end of Episode 4, he's got them. Holly Wheeler, Nancy and Mike's little sister, gets kidnapped along with 11 other kids from Hawkins, including a boy named Derek. Holly's role in particular is massive because she's young enough to be controlled, but smart enough to be useful. And watching Nell Fisher play this character, who's simultaneously brave and absolutely terrified, has been incredible. As most of us know by now, Vecna's been missing since the end of Season 4. After 11, Steve, Nancy and Robin nearly killed him, he vanished, and nobody knew where he went or what he was planning. Volume 1 reveals that he's been biding his time, gathering strength, and preparing for this final assault. His plan is to merge the Upside Down, or what we now know is actually the Abyss, with Hawkins and basically reshape reality itself. Max is still trapped in Vecna's mindscape, which is this dreamlike nightmare realm that Holly later names Camazotz, after the evil planet in A Wrinkle in Time. Max has been there since she died, and was brought back at the end of Season 4, so it's been about 18 months for her, just surviving in this hellscape while her physical body lies in a hospital bed in Hawkins. Sadie Sink's performance when Max finally appears is heartbreaking because you can see how much this experience has changed her. Fun fact that a lot of people missed, the Duffer Brothers confirmed in interviews that Max has been actively hiding from Vecna this entire time, learning the landscape of his mind, figuring out his weaknesses. So she's not just a victim, she's been gathering intelligence, and that becomes really important later. The stakes in Volume 1 are established pretty clearly. It's not just about defeating Vecna anymore. It's about saving these 12 kids, protecting 11 from the military, keeping the rifts from spreading, and somehow finding a way to seal the Upside Down forever. Oh, and doing all of this while Hawkins is under martial law, and most of the adults think the kids are either crazy or dangerous. There's also this running thread about the anniversary of Will's disappearance approaching, which is November 6th, 1983. That date has always been significant in Stranger Things, and the fact that the final battle is building toward that same time frame feels very intentional, like the whole story is coming full circle. So yeah, Volume 1 set the stage in a massive way, but Volume 2, that's where things got absolutely mental. Volume 2 of Stranger Things. Season 5 arrived on Christmas Day, and honestly, it was one of the most information-dense batches of episodes the show's ever done. If you thought Volume 1 was packed with revelations, the 3 episodes that dropped on the 25th basically rewrote everything we thought we understood about the mythology of Stranger Things. The absolute biggest reveal, the one that changes the entire context of the series, is what the Upside Down actually is. Turns out it's not another dimension, it's a wormhole. Dustin figures this out in Episode 5 when he finds Dr. Brenner's journal in the Upside Down version of Hawkins' lab, and his explanation to Steve is one of those moments where you just have to pause and process. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the Upside Down is a bridge between 2 points in time and space, between our world and another world. It's made of something called exotic matter, which is this theoretical substance that stabilizes the wormhole and keeps it from collapsing. And the other world, that's the Abyss. The Abyss is the actual alternate dimension, this chaotic realm of pure darkness and nightmare creatures, where the Demogorgons, the Mind Flayer, and all the other horrors originate. It's where 11 accidentally sent Henry Creel /Vecna/1 back in Season 4 during the Hawkins Lab massacre. According to the Duffer Brothers, they've actually been calling it Dimension X in their internal documents, which is a Ninja Turtles reference, but Dustin names it the Abyss in Episode 7, after the realm of chaos and evil in Dungeons & Dragons. So to break it down simply, because I know this is proper confusing, Earth is our world, the Abyss is Vecna's world, and the Upside Down is the tunnel connecting them. Brenner and the military created the exotic matter barrier that stabilizes this tunnel, probably not realizing what they were actually doing. Vecna's been using the Upside Down as a way to reach back to Earth, and his ultimate plan is to pull the Abyss close enough to Hawkins that he can merge the two worlds together. What makes this even more devastating is the reveal about where Eleven's powers actually came from. This one hit hard. Turns out Dr. Brenner didn't just find kids with natural abilities and train them, he created them. Eleven's powers, Kaylee's powers, all of the numbered children's abilities came from transfusions of Henry Creel's blood. Brenner realized, after experimenting on young Henry, that his blood carried something unique, something that could give others telekinetic abilities if introduced properly. So 11 isn't just fighting Vecna, she's fighting someone whose literal blood runs through her veins. The emotional center of Volume 2, though, is Will's coming out scene. It happens in Episode 7, and Noah Schnapp absolutely nailed it. Will gathers everyone together, his friends and family, and tells them he doesn't like girls. He explains that Vecna showed him a vision of the future, where he was honest about who he is, and in that vision, everyone drifted away from him. His friends stopped calling, his family became distant, and he ended up completely alone. And the thing is, Vecna was trying to use Will's fear against him, trying to isolate him, but it backfired. Because instead of running, instead of judging, everyone just hugs him. Joyce tells him he'll never lose her. Jonathan says the same. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, all of them one by one, they tell Will that he's loved and he's not going anywhere. It's one of the most beautiful scenes in the entire series, and apparently Noah Schnapp was in tears when he first read it. He told Variety that the Duffer Brothers script was perfect, and watching it play out on screen, you can see why. There's also the Nancy and Jonathan situation, which finally gets resolved. They break up. It's sad, but honestly kind of inevitable at this point. Nancy flat out tells Jonathan that she doesn't see a future with him anymore, and while she also says there's nothing there with Steve, we all saw the chemistry between them in the Upside Down scenes. The doors open, but whether Steve actually gets his dream of 6 little nuggets remains to be seen. Max and Holly's escape from Camazotz is another major plot thread in Volume 2. Camazotz is what Holly calls Vecna's mindscape, the nightmare realm where Max has been trapped since the end of Season 4. In Episode 6, titled Escape from Camazotz, the two of them are exploring this landscape, trying to find a way out, and they stumble into one of Henry Creel's repressed memories. They literally fall down a mine shaft and witness young Henry, maybe 8 years old, encountering a Russian spy or scientist in the Nevada desert. This scene is crucial because it ties into the stage play, Stranger Things, the first shadow, which has been running on Broadway. In the play, we learn that Henry disappeared on his 8th birthday and came back different, changed somehow. Volume 2 shows us what happened. The scientist shoots young Henry in the hand, probably terrified of this strange kid in a Boy Scout uniform, and Henry kills him with a rock out of fear and self-defense. Then Henry opens the briefcase the scientist was protecting. And here's where it gets frustrating. The camera pans away. We don't see what's in the briefcase. But Ross Duffer has confirmed in interviews that we will see it in the finale, and whatever's inside apparently explains everything about how Henry became Vecna. The plan going into the finale is pretty straightforward, at least on paper. The gang wants to let Vecna draw the Abyss close enough to Hawkins that they can reach it through the radio tower. Eleven and Carly will enter Vecna's mind psychically to fight him from the inside, while the rest of the team plants a bomb near the exotic matter that's holding the wormhole open. They set a timer, escape, and when the bomb goes off, the bridge collapses. The Abyss gets sealed away forever. Vecna trapped inside, and Earth is safe. Game, set, match. That's how Dustin puts it anyway. But there's a massive complication that only Eleven and Carly know about. In Episode 5, Carly reveals to Eleven what the military was doing to her while she was imprisoned. She was hooked up to IVS and her blood was being transfused into pregnant women in an attempt to create more powered individuals. It's the same program that created them in the first place, just updated for a new generation. And apparently, most of the women were dying because it wasn't working properly. But Dr. K, played by Linda Hamilton, is determined to perfect the process. Kylie's solution is brutal but logical. The only way to permanently stop the military from using their blood to create weapons is to die. If they sacrifice themselves when the Upside Down collapses, their bodies are destroyed, their blood is gone, and the program dies with them. 11 doesn't agree to this plan, not definitively, but at the end of episode 7, there's this look between her and Carly that suggests she's at least considering it. Ross Duffer described it as a sense of dread and uncertainty that pervades the final moments before the big battle. And speaking of dread, episode 7 ends with Holly and the other 11 children sitting at a dinner table in the Creel house, holding hands in a seance. Their eyes roll back, their necks jolt toward the sky, and you can see the power radiating from them as Vecna uses them as a battery to fuel his final plan. That's where Volume 2 leaves us, with absolutely everything on the line and only one episode left to wrap it all up. Before we get into character fates and ending theories, we need to talk about the Upside Down, the Abyss, and what the hell is actually going on with all of this. Because I know the mythology can get proper confusing, especially with all the new information Volume 2 threw at us. So here's the breakdown. For 4 seasons, we all thought the Upside Down was just this alternate dimension that existed parallel to our world, right? Like a dark mirror version of Hawkins where monsters lived. That's what the characters thought too. That's what Brenner probably thought when he was running his experiments. But it turns out everyone was wrong. The Upside Down isn't a place, it's a passage. Think of it like a tunnel connecting 2 actual places. On one end, you've got Earth, our normal world. On the other end, you've got the Abyss, which is this primordial dimension of chaos where nothing good exists. The Upside Down is just the tunnel between them, and it's held together by exotic matter, which is this theoretical substance that scientists have speculated about for decades in quantum physics. Basically, it's the glue keeping the wormhole from collapsing in on itself. What's fascinating here is that Brenner and the military accidentally stabilized this wormhole back when 11 sent Henry Creel through to the Abyss in 1979. Before that, the connection between Earth and the Abyss was probably unstable, fleeting, maybe just brief moments when the barrier between worlds got thin. But when 11 ripped that hole in reality at Hawkins' lab, and when Brenner's team rushed in to study it and stabilize it with their exotic matter experiments, they basically built a permanent bridge to hell. And Vecna's been using that bridge ever since. The Abyss itself is where all the nightmare creatures come from. The Demogorgons evolved there. The Mind Flayer exists there. It's a dimension of pure hostility and darkness. And Henry Creel wandered around in it alone for years after 11 banished him. According to the first Shadow play, which I know not everyone's seen, Henry actually visited what they called Dimension X briefly as a child back in 1959, which is the same place. So he'd been there before, which might explain why he survived when 11 sent him back. Vecna's plan is to draw the Abyss close enough to Earth that the 2 worlds start to merge. He's using the 12 children as amplifiers because their combined psychic energy gives him enough power to manipulate the wormhole itself. If he succeeds, Hawkins doesn't just get invaded by monsters, it becomes part of the Abyss. Reality itself gets rewritten, and from there, Vecna can spread that corruption across the entire world. The Duffer Brothers have said they wrote a 20-page mythology document for Netflix back when they pitched season 1, and apparently all of this was in there from the beginning. They've been sitting on these answers for nearly a decade, just waiting for the right moment to reveal them. And Volume 2 was that moment. I know, it's a lot. Wormholes, alternate dimensions, exotic matter, psychic amplification. But basically, it comes down to this. The Upside Down is the bridge, the Abyss is hell, and Vecna wants to bring hell to Hawkins. And the only way to stop him is to destroy the bridge while he's on the other side. Simple, right? Well, not exactly, because destroying the bridge might mean sacrificing the people who are powerful enough to actually do it. So at the end of Volume 2, the gang has actually got a proper plan for once. And it's Steve of all people who comes up with the core idea. Steve Harrington, the guy who started this series as the popular jock boyfriend, who spent the last few seasons getting beat up and babysitting kids and pining after Nancy. He's the one who figures out the strategy for defeating Vecna. And honestly, I love that. It's such a perfect full circle moment for his character, showing how much he's grown from season 1. Here's how the plan works. Instead of trying to stop Vecna from drawing the abyss closer to Hawkins, they're going to let him do it. They need the abyss to be close enough that they can actually reach it, because that's where Vecna is hiding. So they wait until he pulls that dimension right up against the wormhole, creating a temporary bridge that the team can access through the radio tower in Hawkins. Once that bridge is stable, Eleven and Carly go in psychically. They enter Vecna's mind the same way Eleven did with Billy back in season 3, the same way she's piggybacked into people's consciousness before. But this time, Carly's coming with her, and together they're powerful enough to actually fight Vecna on his home turf. While they're keeping him distracted with the mental battle, the physical team does the real work. The rest of the gang, led by Steve, Dustin, and the others, uses the radio tower as an entry point into the Upside Down. They've got a bomb, presumably something Murray and the military can provide, and they plant it near the exotic matter that's stabilizing the wormhole. Dustin's the one who explains the technical side. Set a timer, escape back through the tower, and when the bomb goes off, the exotic matter gets destroyed. Without that stabilization, the wormhole collapses. The bridge between Earth and the abyss disappears, and with it, everything on the other side gets sealed away forever. Vecna, the Demogorgons, the Mind Flayer, all of it, gone. Game, set, match. That's literally how Dustin puts it, and you can hear the confidence in Gaten Matarazzo's delivery. Like this is just another campaign, just another D&D session, where they figured out the winning strategy. What I love about this plan is that it actually uses everyone's strengths. Eleven and Carly provide the psychic power. The kids who've been fighting monsters for years provide the courage and the tactical knowledge. The adults provide the resources and the muscle. It's a team effort in the truest sense, which has always been what Stranger Things is about, the party working together. But as we all know, plans in Stranger Things never go exactly as expected. There's always something that goes wrong, always a complication nobody saw coming. And in this case, the complication is massive, because Eleven and Carly have a secret. One of the most devastating moments in Volume 2 happens in a quiet conversation between Eleven and Carly that nobody else is privy to. It's in Episode 5, right after they rescue Carly from the military facility in the Upside Down, and it's the kind of scene that just sits with you afterwards because of how heavy it is. Carly tells Eleven what the military was doing to her while she was imprisoned. She was hooked up to multiple IVs, just constantly connected to these machines. And at first she didn't understand why. But then, on the one occasion when she nearly escaped, she discovered the truth. Her blood was being transfused into pregnant women. Dozens of them, maybe more, all lined up in hospital beds, while Coley's blood was pumped into their veins. Dr. Kay, the character Linda Hamilton plays, was running the whole operation. And the goal was exactly what you'd expect. They were trying to create more people, like Eleven and Coley, more powered individuals that the government could control and weaponize. It's literally the same program that created them in the first place, just updated for a new generation. The horrifying part is that it wasn't working. Carly could tell from the screams and the chaos that the pregnant women were in agony. Most of them were dying because their bodies couldn't handle whatever was in Carly's blood. But Dr. K wasn't stopping. She was just adjusting variables, trying different dosages, different timing, convinced that eventually she'd crack the formula. And if the military ever got their hands on Eleven's blood too, if they could combine samples from both of them, study the differences, refine the process, there'd be no stopping them. They could create an entire army of psychic soldiers. Kaylee's solution to this problem is brutal in its logic. She tells Eleven that the only way to protect the world from this program, the only way to ensure the military can never use their blood to create weapons, is to die. Not just die, but to die in the Upside Down, when it collapses. Their bodies destroyed, their blood gone, the source material completely eliminated. It's the only way to be sure. Eleven doesn't agree to this plan, not outright. We don't hear her say yes. But Ross Duffer described the final moments of Episode 7 as having a sense of dread and uncertainty that pervades everything. and you can see it in Millie Bobby Brown's performance. There's this look between Eleven and Carly, this understanding passing between them, and it very much feels like Eleven is considering it, like she knows Carly might be right. What makes this even more heartbreaking is that nobody else knows. Mike doesn't know. Hopper doesn't know. Joyce, Will, Max, Steve, none of them have any idea that Eleven and Kaylee are planning to potentially sacrifice themselves even if they win the battle. So everyone's going into this final fight thinking the plan is to destroy the Upside Down and come home victorious. They don't realise that for Eleven and Carly, there might not be a coming home. The Duffer Brothers have said in interviews that they're not trying to shock people or upset audiences just for the sake of it. They've specifically pushed back against the idea of doing a Red Wedding-style massacre where they just kill characters for shock value. But they've also said that deaths need to feel meaningful and earned, and that the stakes need to feel real. And honestly, this feels real. The military threat has been building since Season 1. We've seen what the government is willing to do to people with powers. Brenner's entire arc was about control and weaponization. Having that come full circle, having Eleven and Carly face a choice between living as fugitives forever or ending the cycle permanently, that's not shock value. That's the logical conclusion of everything the show's been building toward. The question is whether the Duffer Brothers will actually go through with it, or whether they'll find some third option that lets Eleven and Kaylee survive without becoming eternal targets. Going into the finale, we've got this massive question hanging over everything. Will Eleven and Carly really have to die to save the world? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the Demogorgon in the room. Who's gonna die in the finale? It's the question everyone's been asking since Volume 1 dropped, and with good reason. Every season of Stranger Things has featured at least one major death. Barb in Season 1, Bob in Season 2, Billy in Season 3, Eddie in Season 4. The show's established a pattern of killing characters we love, and the Duffer Brothers have made it clear that the stakes in Season 5 are higher than they've ever been. So the real question isn't if someone dies, but who? Let's start with the most obvious candidate, Eleven. The setup for an 11 sacrifice is absolutely everywhere in Volume 2. Carly's plan to die in the Upside Down, the military threat that will never go away as long as Eleven's alive, her entire arc about finding where she belongs and what her purpose is. It all points toward a heroic sacrifice where she gives her life to save the world and free herself from being hunted forever. And there's some circumstantial evidence floating around that supports this. Leaked photos from the finale set show Mike and Hopper together in scenes where Eleven is conspicuously absent. Hopper's wearing his sheriff uniform for the first time in seasons, which feels significant. And Millie Bobby Brown has been pretty emotional in interviews about saying goodbye to the character. But here's the thing, it almost feels too obvious, doesn't it? Like, if we can all see it coming from miles away, would the Duffer Brothers actually do it? They've said they're not trying to shock people, that they want the ending to feel inevitable rather than surprising. And I suppose an 11 sacrifice would feel inevitable given everything we know. But it also feels like it might be a misdirect. Set up the most obvious tragic ending and then pull the rug out with something else. Then there's Carly. She just came back after being absent since Season 2, and some fans think she returned specifically to die in Eleven's place. It would be a redemption arc for her character, atoning for whatever she's done in the years since we last saw her. And it would allow Eleven to live, which a lot of people want. The emotional impact would still be there because we've spent time with Carly in Season 5, but it wouldn't be quite as devastating as losing Eleven. It's the compromise ending. Someone dies to stop the military threat, but it's not our main character. Honestly, I could see this happening. It feels very Stranger Things to bring back a character specifically to give them a heroic ending. Will is another name that keeps coming up in death predictions, and this one makes me properly uncomfortable. The theory goes like this. Will's powers are too similar to Vecna's. He's been connected to the Upside Down since Season 1. He was Vecna's first victim, the first vessel, and Vecna specifically chose him because he knew Will was weak and could be controlled. So maybe, in order to fully destroy Vecna and seal the Upside Down, Will has to die too. Like they're linked, and you can't kill one without killing the other. There's also this Reddit theory that's been going around about how Will's powers in episode 4 looked exactly like Vecna's killing curse. Same visual effects, same energy, same everything. And if Will's powers come from the same source as Vecna's, then maybe they're both drawing from the abyss, and severing that connection requires Will's death. But I honestly can't see this happening. Will just had his coming out scene. He just got accepted and loved by everyone. He just stepped into his power after spending 4 seasons being the victim. Killing him now, right after he's finally found himself, would be incredibly cruel. Not meaningful, just cruel. And the Duffer Brothers have said they're not doing things for shock value. Noah Schnapp himself has talked about how important Will's story is for queer representation, and I just don't think they'd undercut that by immediately killing him off. Then we've got Steve. Sweet, beautiful, perpetually beat-up Steve Harrington. He's had so many close calls throughout the series, and Volume 2 had another one when he was fighting in the upside-down Hawkins lab. There's this whole question of how Steve is still alive at this point, how he's survived this long when he's constantly throwing himself into danger to protect the kids. And his character arc is all about family and finding his purpose. So a heroic sacrifice, where he dies protecting the people he loves, would be very on brand. Joe Keery's been emotional in interviews too. There's been talk about Steve's dream of having 6 kids with Nancy, but have a mutual understanding on where both characters agreed to move on with their lives. The Duffer Brothers confirmed Nancy is meant to end the series on her own and be independent. This future he wants that he's never going to get if Nancy doesn't choose him. And a popular theory is that Steve dies before he can have that happy ending, which would be absolutely gutting. But here's a weird wrinkle. Jimmy Fallon sort of debunked this theory when Joe Keery was on The Tonight Show. He asked directly about Steve dying, and Keery's reaction suggested it might not happen. Of course, actors lie all the time to protect spoilers, so who knows? But I want to believe Steve makes it out alive. I really do. As for supporting characters, the most likely candidates are the ones who've been around, but aren't part of the core group. Murray Bauman seems like a prime target for a heroic death. Mr. Clark, the science teacher, could go out helping the kids one last time. Karen Wheeler had a really close call in Volume 2 that seemed like it was setting up something bigger. And Jonathan, poor Jonathan, has been sort of overshadowed by the Steve and Nancy drama, which sometimes means a character's being set up to die. Holly's in constant danger throughout Volume 2, nearly dying every 5 minutes of screen time, but I don't think they'll actually kill a child. That feels like a line the show won't cross. What's interesting is what the Duffer Brothers have actually said about deaths in Season 5. Matt Duffer told reporters that they're so attached to the characters and the actors that making the decision to kill anyone is challenging. Ross Duffer said they're not doing a Red Wedding situation where they wipe out 8 characters, and they're not doing anything just for shock value. But he also said that when they do a death, the impact has to make sense narratively, and it has to resonate. They've specifically pointed to Eddie Munson as an example. Eddie died at the end of Season 4, and his death resonates throughout all of Season 5. Dustin's still grieving. The Hellfire Club still remembers him. His sacrifice meant something. That's the kind of death they want to do, if they do any at all. So yeah, someone's probably dying. Maybe more than one someone. But who? That's the question we won't have answered until December 31st. Now, I know we just spent ages talking about death, but let's pivot to the more optimistic theories, because there are definitely ways this could end without major casualties. The time travel solution is probably the most popular happy ending theory floating around, and it's got some solid backing. We know now that the Upside Down is a wormhole, which is literally a passage through time and space. That's not just dimension hopping, that's potential time manipulation, and the show's been dropping time travel hints for years. Mr. Clark's flea and the acrobat analogy back in Season 1, where he explained how you could theoretically bend space-time to create a shortcut. That wasn't just a throwaway explanation, it was set up. Plus, A Wrinkle in Time has been referenced constantly in Season 5. Holly names Vecna's mindscape Kamazots after the evil planet in that book. The whole concept of tessering, which is wrinkling time to travel across the fabric of the universe, fits perfectly with what we now know about wormholes and exotic matter. What if the solution isn't to destroy the Upside Down, but to travel back and prevent it from being created in the first place? There's even some visual evidence that supports this. Those leaked photos of Hopper wearing his sheriff uniform, the one he hasn't worn since Season 3, and Mike being with him in scenes where 11 is absent. If they've travelled back to an earlier point in the timeline, that would explain why Hopper looks like old Hopper, and why 11 might not be there yet. Maybe they reset things. Maybe they save everyone by changing the past. The power transfer theory is another interesting option. What if 11 finds a way to transfer her powers to someone else? Or better yet, to disperse them among multiple people, so no single person is powerful enough for the military to exploit. If her blood is what makes her valuable, and her powers are what make her dangerous to herself and others, removing those powers would solve the problem without anyone dying. She'd still be alive, still be Jane Hopper, just without the telekinesis. It would echo Harry Potter in a way, how destroying the Horcrux inside Harry didn't kill him, just removed Voldemort's connection. 11 could lose her powers and gain her freedom. It's a sacrifice, but not the ultimate one. Then there's the fake death theory, which would be very spy thriller but could work. 11 and Carly stage their deaths in the collapse of the Upside Down. They destroy all samples of their blood that the military has, make it look like they died in the explosion, and then disappear with new identities. The government thinks they're gone, so they stop hunting them, and 11 gets to live a normal life under a different name. It's not perfect, she'd have to leave everyone behind, but she'd be alive. Honestly, I'd love to see this one, because it would mean 11 gets what she's always wanted, a quiet life, a family. No more running, no more fighting, just peace, even if it's peace under a fake name in a different town. The collective victory theory is the most optimistic of all, and it's the full power of friendship ending. Will, 11, Kaylee, and maybe even some of the 12 kidnapped children all pool their powers together. They work as a team, combining their abilities to defeat Vecna without any single person having to sacrifice themselves. It would fulfill the promise from the Season 5 synopsis about needing everyone, the full party, standing together, one last time. This is the ending where found family saves the day, where the bonds they've built over 5 seasons are literally what defeats evil. No death, no separation, just the party winning together and then getting to actually enjoy the victory. They could all go back to playing D&D, riding bikes, being kids again. Or, well, young adults at this point. What makes these theories appealing is that they're not wish fulfillment in the sense of ignoring consequences. They still require sacrifice. Time travel means changing the timeline and possibly losing memories or relationships. Power transfer means 11 loses part of herself. Fake death means leaving everyone behind. Collective victory means everyone putting themselves at risk simultaneously. There are still costs, just not the ultimate cost of death. But here's the thing. As much as I want to believe one of these will happen, the Duffer Brothers have been pretty clear that the ending they've planned feels inevitable. And inevitable doesn't usually mean everyone lives happily ever after. It means the story goes where it was always meant to go, even if that destination is painful. So yeah, there are definitely ways everyone could make it out alive. But whether the Duffer Brothers will actually go that route, that's another story. Speaking of the Duffer Brothers, let's talk about what they've actually said about the ending, because they've been pretty careful about what they reveal, but they've dropped some major hints in interviews that are worth analysing. The first thing to know is that Matt and Ross Duffer have had the final scene of Stranger Things planned for years. Like, since before they even finished Season 1, they knew exactly how the series would end. Matt Duffer told The Hollywood Reporter that he hopes by the time people get to the end, it feels like there's something inevitable about what happens. Not surprising, not shocking, but inevitable. Like this was always where the story was headed. And looking back, you can see all the pieces clicking into place. That word, inevitable, keeps coming up in their interviews. They're not trying to subvert expectations or do some big twist ending that nobody saw coming. They want it to feel earned and right, like the natural conclusion to everything they've been building. One mystery they've confirmed will be solved in the finale is the briefcase. Remember that scene in Volume 2 where young Henry kills the scientist and opens the briefcase, but we don't see what's inside. Ross Duffer has explicitly said, "We will see that briefcase again." You're going to get the answers to those questions in the final episode. Whatever's in there apparently explains a massive part of Henry's transformation into Vecna, and it ties into the first Shadow Play's backstory about him visiting Dimension X as a child. As for deaths, the Duffer brothers have tried to manage expectations without spoiling anything. Ross told Today.com, "I can promise you it's not a red wedding situation, like from Game of Thrones. We're not going to wipe out 8 of our characters." Matt added that they're not doing anything for shock value, that when they do a death, if they do a death, it has to make sense narratively, and it has to resonate. They've pointed to Eddie Munson as the model for how they approach character deaths. Eddie died at the end of Season 4, and according to Ross, his death resonates all the way through the entirety of this season. Dustin's still grieving. The Hellfire Club still remembers him. His sacrifice meant something. That's the kind of impact they want if they're going to kill someone off. The mythology payoff is something they're particularly excited about. Matt Duffer mentioned that, especially as we get into the finale, we start to get answers about why Will was kidnapped, how it ties in with Holly and all of this, and that everything sort of comes full circle. They wrote that 20-page mythology document for Netflix back in 2016, and apparently everything in Season 5 has been pulling from that original plan. And then there's the spin-off tease. This one's fascinating because Ross Duffer literally told The National there's one small scene in the finale that gives a hint as to what the spin-off will be. We'll see if people pick up on it. And Matt Duffer immediately responded with, "Why are you giving people that?" which is just brilliant. So we know there's an Easter egg hidden somewhere in the finale that reveals the future of the Stranger Things universe, but it's going to be subtle enough that we might miss it on first watch. What's interesting about all these interviews is how emotional the creators and cast have been. Finn Wolfhard said the final day of filming was incredibly emotional. David Harbour said the entire cast cried uncontrollably and that it's the best episode they've ever made. Jamie Campbell Bower, who plays Vecna, said viewers should feel like they're holding onto their chairs going, "No, no, no," during his scenes. So based on what the Duffer brothers have said, we're looking at an ending that's emotional, inevitable, and meaningful, but not gratuitously tragic. They're tying up loose ends, answering questions, and setting up the future, all while delivering something that feels true to the story they've been telling for nearly a decade. Now let's get into how the actual finale might play out, scene by scene, beat by beat. Because with over 2 hours of runtime, there's loads of ground to cover, and a lot of storylines that need wrapping up. The finale's probably going to open right where Episode 7 left off, with the 12 children in their trance at the Creel House dinner table. Holly's bleeding from being pushed down the stairs, she's scared and defeated, and Vecna's using all of them as a psychic battery to draw the Abyss closer to Hawkins. That seance is the ticking clock for the entire episode. The longer those kids stay in that trance, the stronger Vecna gets, and the closer the two worlds come to merging. So the opening will likely be intense and immediate. No slow build, no catching our breath. We're jumping straight into crisis mode, with the gang realizing they need to execute their plan right now before it's too late. Steve rallying everyone, Dustin going over the technical details one more time, Eleven and Carly preparing themselves mentally for what they have to do. It's go time. The Mindscape battle between Eleven, Carly and Vecna is going to be one of the centerpieces of the finale, and I reckon it'll be properly spectacular. We've seen Eleven fight in the mental realm before, back in Season 3 when she went into Billy's mind, and that was already visually stunning. But this time she's got Carly with her, which means we'll probably see their powers working in tandem. Carly can create illusions, make people see things that aren't there. Eleven can manipulate reality with her mind. Together, they could trap Vecna in a mental prison of their own making. Max's knowledge is going to be crucial here. She spent 18 months exploring Vecna's mindscape, learning his weaknesses, figuring out which memories he avoids and which ones give him power. She'll probably guide Eleven and Carly through his mind, showing them the path to his core, to the part of him that's still Henry Creel and vulnerable. And Holly might play a role too, fighting back from inside the seance, using her connection to Mike through that necklace to stay grounded. It'll be less about physical combat and more about psychological warfare. Vecna trying to break Eleven by showing her visions of failure, of her friends dying, of the world ending. Eleven countering by showing him his own humanity, his own pain, maybe even the briefcase memory in full. A battle of wills and trauma and determination. While that's happening in the mental plane, the physical assault will be unfolding in Hawkins, the gang making their way to the radio tower, fighting through whatever forces Vecna has guarding it. We'll probably see everyone get their hero moment here, Steve with his nail bat taking down demogorgons like he's been doing for years, Dustin coordinating the team, calling out weak points and strategies, Lucas protecting Max's physical body while her mind is elsewhere, Mike refusing to give up on Eleven and his sister. Nancy's going to use her sniper skills because she's proven time and again that she's the best shot in the group. Jonathan will probably be right there with her, maybe reconciling some of their relationship stuff in the midst of battle, because that's very Stranger Things. Joyce and Hopper will be the adult backup, the experienced fighters who've survived Russian prisons and upside-down horrors. And Murray will absolutely have some ridiculous moment where he saves everyone with something completely unexpected. But the real revelation, the one that changes everything, is going to be the briefcase. We're going to see what young Henry found in that cave in 1959, and my guess is that it contains something from Dimension X itself. Maybe a piece of the abyss in physical form, some kind of exotic matter or interdimensional artifact that a government scientist was transporting. When Henry opened it, whatever was inside infected him, changed his blood, gave him his powers. It's why Brenner was able to track him down, why his blood could be used to create other powered individuals. He's not naturally gifted. He's been altered by something from the abyss. If that's true, it means defeating Vecna isn't just about killing Henry Creel. It's about severing his connection to the abyss itself, removing whatever that artifact put inside him. And that might be where Eleven's powers come in, because if her abilities come from Henry's blood, she might be the only one who can reverse the process. The sacrifice moment is going to wreck me. I already know it. Whether it's Eleven and Carly going through with their plan, or Will offering himself instead, or Steve making a last-second decision to stay behind, or someone we haven't even considered stepping up. There's going to be a scene where someone says goodbye, where they tell the people they love how much they matter, where everyone realizes that victory is going to cost them something irreplaceable. I'm imagining tear-soaked faces, Mike telling Eleven he loves her for what might be the last time, Joyce holding Will and refusing to let go, Dustin and Steve having one final moment of their ridiculous bromance, Nancy finally being honest about her feelings. It's going to be emotional and raw and absolutely devastating. The bomb sequence will be tense as hell, the timer counting down, the team making their way back through the upside down to the exit point, and something going wrong, because of course something goes wrong. Maybe someone gets separated from the group. Maybe the Demogorgons make one final push. Maybe the exotic matter starts destabilizing faster than expected and they've got less time than they thought. There'll be a moment where it looks like not everyone's going to make it out, where the choice becomes save yourself or save your friend. And then the explosion, the wormhole collapsing, the upside down ripping apart as the exotic matter gets destroyed. Vecna trapped in the abyss, screaming as the bridge to Earth disappears forever. The 12 children released from their trance, gasping awake, Holly reaching for Mike. The rift in Hawkins sealing shut, reality stabilizing, silence. The aftermath will probably show us Hawkins in the days or weeks following the battle. The military pulling out because there's nothing left to guard. The town rebuilding, both literally and emotionally. Funerals maybe for whoever didn't make it, or hospital scenes for those who barely survived. The characters processing what they've been through, what they've lost, what they've gained. I reckon there'll be a time jump. Not a huge one, but enough to show us that life goes on. Maybe a few months, maybe a year. We'll see the characters adjusting to a world without the upside down, without the constant threat hanging over them. And there'll be callbacks to season 1, mirrors to how this all started. Maybe we end on Will, back on those swings where he used to play before he was taken. Or the kids gathered around a D&D table again, this time with genuine smiles instead of haunted looks. The final scene, the one the Duffer Brothers have known about for years, is probably going to be quiet and intimate. Not a big action beat, but something personal. A moment between characters, or a single character alone, that encapsulates what the entire journey has meant. And somewhere in that ending, hidden in the background, or tucked into a line of dialogue, or shown on a TV screen in the corner of the frame, there'll be the spin-off tease. Something small that hints at what's next for the Stranger Things universe. Of course, this is all speculation, but based on what we know, something close to this feels pretty likely. Let's talk about something a bit lighter, or maybe not lighter, but definitely important to a lot of fans. The relationships. Because we're all worried about who's going to die and whether the world gets saved, but we're also invested in these characters, finding happiness with each other, romantically or otherwise. And the finale's going to have to address at least some of these relationship questions. Steve and Nancy are the obvious starting point. Nancy and Jonathan officially broke up in Volume 2, which was sad, but honestly felt like it had been coming for a while. Nancy told Jonathan straight out that she doesn't see a future with them anymore. And while she also said there's nothing really there with Steve, we all saw the chemistry between them in those upside-down scenes. The way they moved together, the way they communicated without words, the way Steve looked at her like she hung the moon. That chemistry is still there. It's just a question of whether Nancy's willing to act on it. The door's open now. Steve's dream of having 6 little nuggets, of building the family he never had growing up, that's still out there waiting for him. Will he get it? Will Nancy choose him this time? Or will the finale end with them going their separate ways, both of them having grown beyond their high school romance? Honestly, I just want Steve to be happy. The man's been through enough. Will and Mike is the relationship that's going to hurt no matter what happens. Will came out in Volume 2, which was beautiful and emotional and everything it needed to be. But he's still got feelings for Mike, and Mike still seems pretty oblivious to it. Will called Mike his Tammy Thompson, which, if you remember, is the girl Robin had a crush on that Steve thought couldn't sing. It's both sweet and kind of brutal because Mike didn't even catch the reference. Robin gave Will some good advice about not needing reciprocation to feel valid, about being proud of who you are, regardless of whether someone loves you back. And Will seems to have taken that to heart. But I reckon there'll be at least one more conversation between Will and Mike before this is over. Maybe not a full confession, maybe just an acknowledgement, a moment where Mike understands and they can move forward as friends without secrets between them. That would feel right for both characters. Robin and Vicky are probably safe and happy in the background, which is exactly what they deserve. Their relationship hasn't been the focus, but it's been this quiet constant throughout Season 5. And I hope we get to see them together in the epilogue just being normal and content. Joyce and Hopper are endgame, obviously. They've been through literal hell for each other. Russian prisons and upside-down monsters and government conspiracies. If either of them dies in the finale, it'll be saving the other one, because that's who they are. But I'm hoping we get to see them both survive and finally get their happy ending. Maybe a wedding tease in the epilogue, or just them sitting together in their house, quiet and peaceful, knowing they're safe. Lucas and Max had that tender reunion in Volume 2 when Max came back to the real world, and you could see how much he'd missed her, how scared he'd been of losing her. They're probably going to make it through this together. Max has been through too much to die now, and Lucas has been too loyal to lose her. I'd love to see them in the epilogue just being teenagers again, going to the movies or hanging out at the arcade, normal couple stuff. Dustin and Susie are the long-distance relationship that somehow works despite being completely ridiculous. Their duet in season 3 is still one of my favourite moments in the entire series, and I hope we get at least one more bit of Dustin and Susie being adorable nerds together. They'll probably be fine. Dustin's too smart to die, and Susie's too far away to be in danger. The romances might not be the main focus of the finale, but they'll definitely play a part in the emotional payoff. Because at the end of the day, Stranger Things has always been about love. Not just romantic love, but love between friends, love between family, the love that makes people sacrifice everything to protect each other. Beyond the major plot points, there are loads of smaller mysteries and questions that hopefully get answered in the finale. Some of these might seem minor, but in Stranger Things, everything usually connects somehow. The Mind Flayer's role is one I'm really curious about. We know it originated from the Abyss, that it's this massive shadow creature that's been controlling the Demogorgons and possessing people since season 2. But we haven't really seen it in season 5 yet. It's been all Vecna all the time. So where is the Mind Flayer? Is it still in the Abyss waiting? Is it working with Vecna? Or is Vecna controlling it? The first shadow play heavily implies that the Mind Flayer is actually the real puppet master, that it corrupted Henry Creel in the first place. If that's true, defeating Vecna might not be enough. The Mind Flayer could still be out there, and the finale needs to address what happens to it when the wormhole collapses. The Russian connection is another thread that feels unfinished. We had Dmitri, Yuri, and Enzo helping Hopper escape from the prison in season 4, and there was that whole subplot about the Russians having their own Demogorgon and trying to open their own gate to the Upside Down. Does that play into the finale at all? Are the Russians still experimenting with this stuff? Could they become a problem in the future? Or did the collapse of the Soviet Union shut down their program? It'd be interesting if there was some acknowledgement of the international implications here, that America isn't the only country that knows about the Upside Down. Hawkins itself needs addressing. The town's been under military quarantine for months at this point. Soldiers everywhere, people trapped in their homes, businesses shut down. When the Upside Down gets sealed and the threat disappears, what happens next? Does the military just pack up and leave? Do they try to cover everything up with some official story about a chemical spill or a gas leak? Do the people of Hawkins even remember what really happened? Or is there some mass memory wipe situation? And what about the giant rifts that opened up at the end of season 4? Those are massive scars on the landscape. You can't just pretend they don't exist. I'd almost forgotten about the other lab children. We know there were multiple test subjects before 11. We saw some of them in season 4 when we got Henry Creel's backstory. But are there others still out there? Kids who escaped or were released or are being held in other facilities? If the military's been using Carly's blood to try to create more powered individuals, what happened to those experiments? Are there other 11s and Carlys running around that we don't know about? That could be connected to the spin-off tease, honestly. Eddie Munson's legacy has been mentioned as resonating throughout season 5, and I'm hoping we get some kind of tribute to him in the finale. Dustin's been grieving him all season, and the Hellfire Club clearly misses him. Maybe there's a scene where they dedicate a D&D campaign to his memory, or where his name gets cleared publicly, so people stop thinking he was a murderer. Eddie deserves that much. Vecna's final form is something Jamie Campbell Bower teased in interviews. Apparently, there's a redesign. He's thinner and spinier, more monstrous than he was in season 4. We caught glimpses of it in the teaser trailer, but I'm betting the finale gives us the full reveal. Final boss evolution, you know? Like he's shedding the last remnants of his humanity and becoming pure abyss creature. And what about the supernatural survivors? Will keeps his powers after all this is over, right? And what happens to the 12 children who were used as Vecna's battery? Do they go back to being normal kids? Or are they changed forever? Holly's definitely going to have trauma from this experience, and she's only 8 years old. That's heavy stuff to process. These might seem like small details, but they're the kind of thing that'll determine whether the ending feels complete or rushed. So, if I had to guess what the actual ending will be, not what I want necessarily, but what feels most true to Stranger Things, here's what I think we're looking at. Vecna gets defeated, the Upside Down gets sealed, but not everyone makes it out. I reckon there's going to be one major death, probably either 11 or Will, though I'm leaning toward it being a supporting character like Kaylee or maybe even Steve in a last-second heroic sacrifice. The Duffer Brothers have been clear that they're not doing a massacre, but they've also said the stakes need to feel real and that deaths need to resonate. So one significant loss that absolutely guts the audience and the characters, but leaves the core group mostly intact. The survivors will be changed though, scarred, both literally and metaphorically. I'm imagining a scene maybe a few months after the final battle, where we see them trying to return to normal life. And you can tell by the way they move, the way they interact, that they're not the same people anymore. Will might have permanent marks from his connection to the Upside Down. Max might still be dealing with the psychological trauma of being trapped in Vecna's mind. 11 might have lost her powers completely, or maybe they're weaker now, flickering. Hawkins itself will be scarred too. Those massive rifts aren't going to just disappear. The town will probably be rebuilding, physically putting itself back together while trying to process what happened. And I reckon there'll be some kind of memorial, something permanent that honours everyone who was lost. Not just in Season 5, but Bob and Barb and Billy and Eddie, and all the others who died fighting this thing. The sacrifice, whoever makes it, needs to happen in a way that feels earned. There should be a moment where they get to say goodbye properly, where they tell the people they love exactly how they feel. No regrets, no words left unsaid. If it's 11, she needs to hear Mike tell her he loves her one more time. If it's Will, he needs to know that Joyce and Jonathan are proud of him. If it's Steve, he needs to know that he found his purpose and his family, even if he didn't get his 6 kids. I love you. Thank you. I'm not scared. Those are the kinds of lines that'll wreck us. But despite the loss, there needs to be hopefulness. Life continuing, love persisting, friendship enduring. The epilogue will probably show us that the survivors are okay, or at least they will be. They're moving forward, they're healing. Maybe Dustin's off at college studying engineering. Maybe Lucas and Max are together and happy. Maybe Robin's openly herself without fear. Maybe Joyce and Hopper finally get married in a small ceremony with just the people they love. And I think the ending will circle back to the beginning. We probably see Will on those swings from the pilot episode, or the gang sitting around a D&D table again, like they did in Season 1. Mike rolling the dice for a campaign, everyone laughing, and for just a moment, everything feels normal and safe and good. That callback to simpler times, before any of this started, but with the weight of everything they've been through, evident in how they play, how they relate to each other. Maybe the final shot is someone asking, should we tell her the truth? Which was one of the first lines of the entire series, bringing it full circle. Or maybe it's just the camera pulling back from Hawkins, showing the town from above, scarred but surviving, and the screen fades to black. Somewhere in that epilogue, probably in the background of a scene, or in a brief news report, or in dialogue that seems throwaway, there'll be the spin-off tease. Something about an incident in another town, or a government program that survived, or a character noticing something strange, small enough to miss but significant enough to build a whole new story around. It's bittersweet. It's emotional. It acknowledges that fighting monsters changes you forever, but that life is still worth living on the other side. It honours the sacrifices while celebrating the victories. And most importantly, it feels like Stranger Things. Not grimdark, not saccharine, but honest about the cost of heroism while still believing in the power of love and friendship. That, to me, would be the perfect ending. Not perfect in the sense of everyone getting exactly what they want, but perfect in the sense of feeling true to the story they've been telling for almost a decade. And honestly, I think that's probably pretty close to what we're going to get. Now, let's talk about some of the more out there theories that probably won't happen but are fun to think about anyway. The "it was all D&D" theory is one that pops up in every fandom with fantasy elements, and Stranger Things is no exception. The idea is that everything we've watched for 5 seasons was actually just the kids playing their Dungeons & Dragons campaign. 11 was their character, the Demogorgon was the monster they were fighting in the game, and the whole thing has been one elaborate session. It would explain some of the more fantastical elements and the game-like structure of how the seasons play out. Why it won't happen. because it would invalidate the entire emotional journey of the series. All the deaths, all the trauma, all the relationships, none of it would have been real. The Duffer Brothers would get absolutely destroyed by fans, and rightfully so. It's the kind of ending that feels clever for about 5 seconds before you realise it's just lazy writing. Plus, they've specifically said the ending will feel inevitable and earned, and this is neither. The everyone dies theory is the nihilistic option. Total party wipe, Vecna wins, Hawkins gets destroyed, the world ends, roll credits. Some fans genuinely think this could happen because it would be shocking and subversive, and all those things that prestige TV is supposed to be. But the Duffer Brothers literally said they're not doing a Red Wedding situation. They've said they're not wiping out 8 characters. This theory ignores everything they've told us about their approach to the ending. Also, Stranger Things has never been a grim, dark show. It's always balanced darkness with hope, horror with heart. Ending with everyone dead would betray the entire tone of the series. The 11 is Vecna time loop theory is properly mental, but I've seen it floating around Reddit. The idea is that 11 eventually becomes Vecna through some kind of circular timeline situation. Maybe the upside down doesn't just bend space, it bends time. An old 11 from the future is actually Henry Creel. The powers match, the connection to the lab matches, and it would explain why Vecna seems to know so much about her. Why it's possible but unlikely. Time travel is on the table now, that we know the upside down is a wormhole. But making 11 the villain all along would require so much retconning and explanation that it'd take over the entire finale. Plus, we've literally seen Henry Creel as a child in multiple flashbacks. Unless those are all fake memories or something, which just gets too complicated. Then there's the multiple timelines theory, where the wormhole creates split realities and different outcomes exist simultaneously. Everyone dies in one timeline but lives in another, and maybe the finale shows us both, or lets characters choose which timeline becomes real. It's very multiverse, very trendy right now, with Marvel and Everything Everywhere all at once making that popular. But it's not really Stranger Things style, is it? The show's always been pretty straightforward with its storytelling. One timeline, one reality, consequences that matter. Introducing multiverses in the last episode would feel like it's jumping on a bandwagon rather than telling its own story. The "it's all in Will's mind" theory suggests that Will never actually escaped the Upside Down back in Season 1. Everything since then has been a fantasy he's created to cope with being trapped there. It would explain some inconsistencies and why certain things don't make logical sense. This one makes me proper angry because it absolutely won't happen, and most fans hate it. The Duffer Brothers would never do this. It's the same problem as the D&D theory, invalidating everything we've watched. Plus, it would mean Will created a fantasy where he's constantly traumatized and possessed, which doesn't make any sense. There's also the Hawkins is Dimension X theory, which flips everything. What if their world is actually the abyss, and the Upside Down is the real Earth? They've been in the wrong dimension all along and just didn't know it. Mind-bending, sure, but there's been absolutely no setup for this. It's the kind of twist that sounds cool as a Reddit post, but would be infuriating to watch. The evidence fans use for these theories is usually pretty flimsy. Easter eggs that are just coincidences, dialogue taken out of context, visual parallels that adjust the show's aesthetic. And look, I love a good theory as much as anyone, but some of these require such massive leaps in logic that they're more fun to laugh about than seriously consider. So yeah, most of these are pretty far-fetched. But hey, stranger things have happened, literally. One thing we know for certain is that there's a Stranger Things spin-off coming, and the Duffer Brothers have said there's a hint in the finale that points to what it'll be about. The spin-off has been confirmed to be in development at Netflix, and we know a few basic things about it. It's going to feature new characters, not the main cast we've been following for 5 seasons. It's set in a different era or time period from the main series, and it's somehow connected to the Stranger Things universe, though the exact nature of that connection is being kept under wraps. What makes this particularly interesting is Ross Duffer's comment to The National. He said, There's one small scene in the finale that gives a hint as to what the spin-off will be. We'll see if people pick up on it. And then Matt Duffer, apparently shocked that his brother was revealing this, asked, "Why are you giving people that?" It's this brilliant moment of one creator being excited to share and the other wanting to keep the mystery intact. So we know it's there. We know it's small. We know it'll be easy to miss on first watch. And the entire fandom is going to be analysing every single frame of the finale looking for it. The popular theories about what the spin-off could be are all over the place. A lot of people think it might be set in the 1950s or 60s, during the early days of the government experiments that eventually led to Brenner and the lab. We could follow the scientists who first discovered the abyss, or the early test subjects before the Numbered Children program really got going. The first Shadow play covers some of this ground, but there's definitely more story to tell. Others reckon it'll be set in the 1990s or early 2000s after the main series ends. Maybe following a new generation dealing with the aftermath of Hawkins, or a completely different town where similar supernatural events start happening. The idea that the government had programs in multiple locations, not just Hawkins, would make sense. There's also speculation about an international setting. What if the Russians weren't the only other country experimenting with the upside down? What if there are gates opening in other parts of the world? A spin-off set in Japan or the UK or Brazil could explore how different cultures would respond to these supernatural threats. Some fans think it'll be more focused on the military and government side of things, like a spy thriller mixed with Stranger Things weirdness. Following the people who are covering up these incidents, the agents who are hunting powered individuals, the conspiracies within conspiracies. What we should be watching for in the finale are background details that seem insignificant. A news report playing on a TV in the corner of a scene about strange happenings somewhere else. Dialogue where someone mentions a relative who lives in another town and weird stuff has been happening there too. Documents or files that Dustin or someone finds that reference other programs or locations. A character we've never seen before appearing briefly, maybe even just walking past in the background of a crowd scene. Time period indicators would be a giveaway too. If we see a flashback to an earlier decade or a flash forward to a later one, pay attention to everything in that scene. Names, places, dates, anything that could be built into a whole new story. The epilogue scenes are probably where it'll be hidden. That's when the main story is wrapped up and the Duffer brothers can afford to plant seeds for the future without distracting from the emotional resolution. I'll definitely be rewatching the finale multiple times just to hunt for this Easter egg, and I know the whole community will be comparing notes trying to figure it out. The main story ends on December 31st, but the Stranger Things universe is far from over. Before we wrap up, I think it's worth talking about why this finale is such a big deal in the first place. Because yeah, it's just a TV show, but also it's so much more than that for a lot of people. Stranger Things isn't just Netflix's flagship series. It's the show that basically defined what streaming television could be. When it premiered back in July 2016, nobody knew if Netflix originals could compete with traditional networks. And then this weird 80s throwback show about kids and monsters became a global phenomenon practically overnight. It proved that streaming platforms could create cultural moments, not just content to binge and forget. The numbers alone are mental. We're talking billions of viewing hours across all seasons, trending worldwide every time new episodes drop, merchandise everywhere, Halloween costumes, theme park attractions. Stranger Things became bigger than a show. It became a brand, a cultural touchstone, a shared experience for people across the world. But what really makes this finale matter is the nostalgia factor. The Duffer brothers created this love letter to 80s Spielberg and Stephen King, to a time when kids rode bikes everywhere and had adventures and solved mysteries. And they did it so well that even people who weren't alive in the 80s feel nostalgic for it. It taps into something universal about childhood and friendship, and that feeling of summer lasting forever. For a lot of people, Stranger Things became comfort viewing, something you could put on when the world felt too heavy and just escape into Hawkins for a while. During the pandemic especially, when we were all stuck at home and scared, rewatching Stranger Things was like visiting old friends. The show got us through some really dark times, and that creates a bond that goes beyond normal TV fandom. We've also literally grown up with these characters. Millie Bobby Brown was 12 years old when she filmed season 1. Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Noah Schnapp, they were all kids. And now they're adults. We've watched them age in real time, watched their acting improve, watched them become the characters they're playing. That's rare in television. Usually you get time jumps or recasting, but with Stranger Things, we've been on this journey with them for 8 years. The collective experience of watching Stranger Things has been special too. The theories on Reddit, the discussions on Twitter, the reaction videos, the fan art, the cosplay. It's brought people together in a way that's increasingly rare in our fragmented media landscape. Yeah, lots of people watch the same shows, but Stranger Things created actual communities. Friendships have formed over shared love of these characters. People have bonded over debating theories and dissecting episodes. And now there's massive pressure on the Duffer Brothers to stick the landing. We've all seen what happens when beloved shows fumble their endings. Game of Thrones is the obvious example, how a disappointing final season can sour people's feelings about the entire series. The stakes for Stranger Things are arguably even higher because it's been built up for so long, because the wait between season 4 and season 5 was 3 years, because everyone has such strong feelings about how it should end. The representation in the show matters too. Will's coming out story has meant everything to queer viewers who saw themselves in his struggle. Having a character who's been there since the beginning come out and be accepted, that's huge. The show's handled it with care and respect, and the finale needs to honour that. So yeah, it's just a TV show, but it's also a piece of our lives, a shared cultural experience, a comfort and an inspiration. That's why the finale matters. Let's wrap this up with my actual predictions and honestly, what I'm really hoping to see when the finale drops on New Year's Eve. What I think will probably happen. Vecna gets defeated through the combined efforts of everyone. The Upside Down collapses and gets sealed away from Earth forever. At least one major character dies, and I'm leaning toward it being either Carly in a redemption sacrifice, or possibly even Will, though that would absolutely destroy me. 11 survives but loses her powers in the process, which solves the military problem without requiring her death. The 12 kidnapped children all get rescued, including Holly. The found family stays mostly intact. There's a time jump epilogue showing everyone healing and moving forward. And somewhere in that ending, hidden in a background detail or throwaway line, there's the spin-off tease. That feels like the Duffer Brothers style. Bittersweet but hopeful. Earned but not gratuitous. One heartbreaking loss balanced against multiple victories. What I'm really hoping happens. Steve gets his happy ending, whatever that looks like for him. Whether it's with Nancy or just finding peace with who he's become, the man deserves to not die tragically. Will's story gets honoured properly. His coming out was such a beautiful moment, and I want to see him go into the final battle, confident and loved, not scared and alone. Max fully recovers from her time in the mindscape and gets to just be a teenager again with Lucas. Dustin gets a proper hero moment that showcases how brilliant he is. Joyce and Hopper both survive and get to be happy together after everything they've been through. The entire party makes it out alive, changed but together. I want Holly to be rescued successfully and reunited with Mike and Nancy. I want all 12 of those kids to go home to their families. I want Erica to have another scene where she's completely badass. I want Murray to have one final ridiculous moment that somehow saves the day. What would absolutely break my heart? Will dying right after coming out. That would feel cruel rather than meaningful. 11 dying alone without getting to say goodbye properly to the people she loves. Steve dying before he gets any kind of happiness or resolution with Nancy. Both 11 and Carly dying when there could have been another way. Jonathan dying because Joyce has been through enough and losing another son would destroy her. Dustin dying because Steve would never recover from that loss. Holly not making it because she's 8 years old, and that would be too dark even for this show. What would feel cheap and unsatisfying? Everyone living without any real consequences. some deus ex machina solution that fixes everything easily. The "it was all a dream" or any variation of that. An unexplained happy ending that ignores all the setup about the military and the blood experiments. Resurrecting characters who died in previous seasons. Ignoring character growth and development for shock value twists. What would be absolutely perfect? One meaningful sacrifice that resonates. Maybe it's Carly, maybe it's a supporting character we love, maybe it's even 11 but done in a way that feels right. Everyone else survives but carries the weight of what they've been through. An epilogue, set several months later, showing them healing. A scene around a dinner table or a D&D game that mirrors Season 1, but with the maturity and scars of everything since. The original soundtrack playing, maybe "Should I Stay or Should I Go" one more time, a credits montage showing where everyone ends up, and then a post-credits scene with the spin-off tease that gets the fandom buzzing immediately. That's what I want. That's what feels right to me. But honestly, I trust the Duffer Brothers. They've earned that trust over 5 seasons. Whatever they've planned, I reckon it'll be emotional and beautiful, and probably make me cry. We'll see how right or wrong I am in just a few days. And that, my dear friends, is where we're at with Stranger Things Season 5. The finale drops on December 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And honestly, I cannot wait to see how this all plays out. We've covered the theories, the predictions, the hopes and fears, and now all that's left is to actually watch it happen. I'll definitely be back after the finale drops to talk about what went down, what we got right, what we got wrong, and how it all felt. It's been quite a journey with these characters, and I'm grateful we got to take it together. But until next time, stay safe and sweet dreams. See you on the other side of the upside down.